little side note here. My computer, I fried my computer yesterday on the metro when I put a bottle of water in my bag and it opened. So I had to work on an old computer, find an old presentation, and try to bring it up to speed. So anyway, that's my sorry excuse. Hi, how are you? Thank you for coming together and to allow me some space to share some perspectives. I guess from firsthand experience. So as a Ganyankahaga or Mohawk and coming from Ganawage, which is 15 minutes from downtown Montreal and McGill University for those that don't know. And I welcome you all to Jukjage Ganyankahaga territory. This is our traditional homelands, has been, and our responsibility is to welcome our guests and visitors to the territory and trust that your stay here is a good one. And that while you're on our territories, that you treat the land and the environment and each other in the way that comes with our original instructions, with respect, with kindness, and with caring. And so to share some thoughts around education and diversity and minorities, I'll come from my own experiences as a student, as an educator, and in the education field and also in the health field, because this is where I find myself for the last couple of decades working in health promotion, particularly around diabetes prevention, and now more working in the area of cultural safety with medical students, residents, and health professionals. And so talking about traditional education and what an ideal setting of learning is from an indigenous perspective, pre-contact with the colonizers, is one that nested the individual within the natural environment. The whole life experience was about being part of a sacred circle of which we acknowledge that the existence of all those life supporters, from Mother Earth to the waters, to everything that grows, to all the other things that live on the earth, to all those beings in the sky that watch over and have roles and responsibilities, we acknowledge that and appreciate that because those things all contribute to our existence. And so a traditional indigenous setting of learning is immersed in a world of respect, of relationality, not only among people, but also with the environment and with Mother Earth and with living things, and not only on a physical level, but also on a spiritual level, so that there's a mind, body, spirit relationship at play, and the thought and worldview and interactions is different than that what we see today in a Western civilized state. Indigenous knowledge and information comes from oral tradition. It comes from creation stories that our ancestors crafted multiple millennia ago to rationalize and understand how they got here, why we're here, what our roles and responsibilities are, and how this great mystery all comes to work. And they put together with what we look at today as simple knowledge, caveman knowledge, early lands people knowledge, was actually, in fact, some very great intense thinking and rationalizing over generations of conversations and storytellings relating to human existence in the natural environment. And so they were able to, as indigenous nations and cultures around the world have done, is to identify where we came from, a creation source, our roles and responsibilities, and our relationship. And so that indigenous world education within that world is nurturing somebody that's in an environment that is fully supportive, fully providing everything that's needed for not only the individual journey, but the family, clan, collective, village, and eventually nation state society. Everyone within the society is a role model. Everyone is a teacher. And so it becomes important that people understand their roles and responsibilities, and that following those roles and responsibilities not only it ensures the survival of the people, but the thriving existence of the people. And it's an important thing to note, because because the next part of the presentation, we start talking about the shift in language and concepts of colonial language and top-down thought of other peoples. And it changes narratives, and it changes of how we look at ourselves in relation to the world and into roles and responsibilities. So in an indigenous world, everyone and everything is a teacher, is a teaching, is an opportunity to learn. And the relationships in society is set up to reinforce opportunities to explore, to question, and as you age, to then be with people, like people who have similar gifts or skills or interests, to nurture that, to then become experts in food, song, hunting, craft work, singing, storytelling, whatever it is that the society requires to be full rounded. And so education in a traditional indigenous perspective is in a natural way. It takes place 24/7 without benefit of a classroom, because what you're looking at now is the classroom all the time, and being in the place and doing the things that require to be done for ensuring that successful thriving of the society. And therefore, that other time that you have is to nurture yourself, is to understand your being and your journey, and to nurture those gifts that you have within you, and to understand your relationships with our relatives with whom we share the earth, all those things and life that grows on the earth, and our ancestors, and our brother sun, grandmother moon, etc. All those identifiers within our culture, who are our teachers and our guides, to provide us with those things that we need to make sense of our journey, to rationalize, and to continue to go forward. And so everything is in the curriculum that that is to be learned. And from there, we have strong, self-knowing, high efficacy, high management skills men and women, boys and girls, human beings, who are contributing to the continuity of a culture, of a society that's rich, that is thriving, that is successful. Until one day when these boats with sails on them appear on the eastern horizon, on the Western Hemisphere, bringing an entirely different perspective that's born from culture that speaks to men, human beings, being in control of life, and having stewardship over the land, the waters, and all living things, including people. And so we then witness a Western civilization history that's marked with acts of aggression to gain resources at the expense of human beings. And so the one example that we see as Indigenous people, and that I share often, is the separation of roles and responsibilities and equality between men and women in that Western worldview. I'm talking about going back to the very ancient, very beginnings of time, and prove me wrong with a survey of the history of Western civilization that bears out male violence to control resources over the slaughter of people and the sacrifice of women and children. So that's what you do with your own people. So when you're going to come to a shore with the different peoples, that attitude is going to prevail, and it creates then this hundreds of years of a conflict of civilizations clashing between what is civilized and what is uncivilized, and who's determining that. And as a result of that, our education experience as Indigenous peoples takes this very severe 90-degree turn from first contact in the 16th, 15th, 16th, 17th centuries into the 19th and 20th, which results in the drawing that you see here with the residential school experience in contemporary Canada of church and state combining to kidnap and to assimilate through genocidal tactics, even the Indigenous population. And so we then see a shift in that loving, thriving, nurturing education setting to one of fear and violence, and group pictures of children forced into rooms smiling. It looks wonderful for press and publicity, but also that you see images of forced religion on children. And we now hear of a legacy coming from the first people's voices of the horrific nightmare that's called education by the government on our peoples, which then results in the creation of what's labeled as an ethno